Hi guys, so we're in Sky Song chapter 23 and we're back to Esker. I just had to check then that we're on chapter 23. I never know what I'm doing most days. Esker felt Balapan leap from her shoulder, but as she reached out with scrabbling hands, they met with wooden bars ahead, around and behind. Esker gulped. They were locked inside a cage. She swung her skis down to grab her bow and heard Flint unsheath his anything knife. Then a voice in the dark spoke. Who are you? It was a boy who sounded a little older than Esker and Flint. Two of us are fur tribes, Flint stammered, and then he paused and added hopefully, fur tribe warriors and need fire, Blue whimpered, cold toes. And another voice slithered out of nowhere. A girl this time, and her tone was frostier than the boy's. They don't sound like warriors to me. I vote we let our arrows fly. I'm a wanderer, Esker said. Wolf-Tooth daughter, he came to you before the battle at Winterfang? Her voice was met with a deathly hush, then the girl's voice came again, and each word was coated in hate. You're not welcome here. Your father is the reason ours are gone. If we hadn't come and stirred up ideas of fighting the Ice Queen, maybe ours wouldn't have left the Nevercliffs. She paused. You're the reason we lost our tribe. The boy spoke again. Easy, Rook. Remember the moonflit. It let them pass. But then there were murmurs now, dozens of voices clamouring in the dark. Get her out. She's not got any right to be in here. Esker's ears churned with all too familiar sounds of a tribe turning against her, and she felt the hopes she'd harboured on her journey through the Nevercliffs sift slowly away. And then Rook's voice came, cool but loaded. We should just kill her. Esker's pulse skittered, and the voices grew into a knot of angry hisses. How dare she show her face? Our parents are gone because of her. She's probably working for the Ice Queen now. Esker shrank inside her furs, and from Flint's feet Pebble whimpered. Was it to be like this everywhere she went? Walls of loathing that she couldn't break down? The voices rose louder still, the threats grew darker, and Balapan leapt back onto her shoulder. Esker felt the eagle's talons dig down to her bones. Then Balapan cried out, a sharp screech that echoed through the mountain. The voices fell silent. Lights, the boy commanded. In the darkness, bring up the lights. A scraping sound followed of metal striking stone, then one by one lamps emerged onto rocky ledges, until finally a giant atrium came into view. Enormous dream catchers studded with quartz and strung with snowy owl feathers dangled from the roof, while the cavern floor was scattered with loose feathers, red ones striped with black, white ones dashed grey, large black ones, oval downy ones, and small electric blues. And there were branches, too, fashioned into chairs and tables in amongst the feathers. It was like a giant's nest. But even more extraordinary were the feather tribe themselves. The cabin walls were full of scoops and bulges, and inside every one was a large wooden bird cage, like the one Esker and her friends were currently trapped in. But the doors to these other cages were open. Crouched within were boys and girls, all with black hair and dark skin, and clad in wolf furs with colourful feathers splayed out in a fan over their shoulders and chests. They were armed, each with an arrow poised on a bow, and every single one was pointed at Esker and her friends. You have a golden eagle? It was the boy they'd heard speak first, and he was standing in the biggest of the bird cages, one tucked into the middle of the far wall. He climbed down the ledges, his electric blue shoulder feathers shimmering in the candlelight, before striding across the cabin floor. He stood before his prisoners, but his face was softer than Esker had expected it to be. We only want to ask you about the Frosthorn, she said, quietly. Flint nodded. We don't mean you any trouble. I had a dream that you would come, the boy said. A girl with a golden eagle asking about the songs we sing of the long-forgotten Frosthorn. Esker lowered her bow and, with Balapan still perched on her shoulder, she gripped the bars of the cage. Yes, she breathed. Your songs, that's why we've come. She glanced down at Blue, and to find proper shelter for our friend. She fell in the lake, and the thunder ghosts nearly drowned her. There was a snort from behind the boys. A girl with narrow eyes and a fan of black feathers over her upper body slunk forward. Lies, Jay. Don't listen to her. No one could outwit the thunder ghosts now that the Ice Queen has them in her power. She paused, and there's something strange about her voice. I don't like it. Esker recognised the girl as the one who had spoken with such malice a moment ago, and she knew she had a choice. back down as she had done in the labyrinth, or stand up and try to be brave. It's not lies, she said. Flint rescued Blue from the lake with one of his inventions. The boy frowned. Inventions? Flint blushed and then mumbled something into his chest, but Esker pressed on. Yes, when he said he was a warrior earlier, he meant to say that he's an inventor. Her voice was rough and gravelly thanks to the Ice Queen's magic, but she gathered up her words nonetheless. One of the best that Erkenwald has ever seen. Flint slid a sideways glance to Esker. You really are terrible at conversations. But Jay didn't wrinkle his nose or scoff at Esker's words. He just nodded, then he looked at the girl beside him. There is something different about her voice, but I'm not sure it's something we should fear. He paused, and we could do with an inventor in times as dark as these. What do you think, Rook? Rook circled the cage, her eyes dark, never leaving Esker's. Then she shrugged. Suit yourself, but you know what I think of your visions. Just because you dreamed of a moonflit protecting us and one turned up to show us the entrance to the lost chambers doesn't mean that we should let an inventor, a wanderer, and... She looked down her nose at Blue, a snivelling little nobody into our tribe, especially when they go on banging on about the Frosthorn, which we all know doesn't exist. Flint raised his chin at Rook, his eyes hard, and Esker could feel the anger on Blue's behalf boiling inside him. She reached out a hand and held his arm. Not now, Flint. We need the help. Rook's words dripped on. They'll weaken the Feather Tribe, Jay. Mark my words. She sloped off into the shadows, and Jay turned back to his prisoners. The Moonflit trusted you earlier, and that's enough for me, whatever Rook says. But before I tell you anything about us, I need to know how you found the lost chambers, when even the Ice Queen and her guards failed to. He paused. Prove that you're not against the Ice Queen and her dark magic. And so Flint and Esker told Jay of their escape from Winterfang, of the sleigh chase through deep roots, of Whitefur's words about the Sky Song and the Frosthorn, and finally about the spider who had helped them find the lost chambers. Jay nodded when Esker and Flint finished speaking. You're a true wanderer, Esker. Your bond with the Golden Eagle proves it, and I can sense the power in your voice, despite what the Ice Queen is doing to it. Balapan's talons squeezed Esker's shoulder gently, and she felt a quiet sense of pride. My parents are the chief and chieftainess of the Feather Tribe, Jay said, and though they're locked up in Winterfang, they told me to listen to my dreams, the gift every chief of the Feather Tribe is blessed with, and I'm listening to them now. He lowered his voice and looked straight at Esker. I want to help you. And those last 5 words cradled Esker in a warmth, because there was now an opening, a little space in this tribe for Esker and her friends. Jay took a key from his pocket and turned it into the birdcage lock. The door creaked open, and Esker, Flint, Pebble, Blue, and Balapan stepped out into the atrium. But from the shadows of an alcove, Rook narrowed her eyes and turned a sharp white fang over in her hands. It was the one she had stepped on a few weeks ago while out in the open. The one that had caused her foot to turn black before she pulled it out, and the one that belonged undoubtedly to a cursed Wolverine. And only one person had had the power to hex Wolverines. Chapter 24. Flint. Jay glanced at Blue, then cupped his hands round his mouth. Pippet, he called. Take Blue here to the hot springs. She needs a warm bath. Blue clung to Flint. You come too, my brother, Bath. Flint ushered Blue towards Pippet, a little boy with dreadlocks and green-spotted shoulder feathers. I need to talk with Jay. Go along now, Blue. But Blue shook her head. With you, big brother, and Pebble. For a moment, Flint ground his teeth. Then he remembered Blue's face beneath the Devil's Dance floor and how far she had come from all that she knew and loved. And he saw what was really important. I won't be long, he said to Esker and Jay, and as he walked hand in hand with his little sister after Pippet, he couldn't help feeling that something about Jay was oddly familiar. He racked his brains as he crossed the cavern, but his thoughts were broken by a voice from the shadows. Strange kind of warriors, Rook muttered. Flint tensed as he heard the words, but he kept on walking out of the main atrium and along another tunnel that widened into a very different chamber. It was smaller than the first, and when Flint saw that it was filled with a dozen bubbling hot springs jutting out from the rocks, he forgot his anger. He grinned at Blue, and moments later they were submerged in the steaming water. Even Pebble found himself kicking about in a smaller pool, and Flint wondered then at all the things he'd seen since meeting Esker. It had been a detour worth following after all, he had to admit to himself. They dried themselves with feathered blankets, then slipped back into their furs and returned to the main chamber, where the tribe was sitting round a long table piled high with food. Balapan watched from a ledge up among the dream catchers, only shifting her gaze to snatch at the mice she found scuttling through the cavern, while Flint and Blue took a seat next to Esker, by Jay at the head of the table. The feather tribe ate quietly, now and again stealing glances at the newcomers and sharing thoughts in guarded whispers. Jay swallowed a mouthful of food. We plan to hide here for as long as it takes for the Ice Queen's rule to crumble. We're quick-moving and we're quiet. We can stay one step ahead of her and the Tusk Gods in the Lost Chambers. Esker fiddled with her fork. The Ice Queen's rule isn't just going to crumble if she fails in her plans. Not without me finding this frost horn and claiming the Sky Song. Because when the midnight sun rises, she and all her prisoners at Winterfang will perish. Jay's face paled, and Esker went on. Staying hidden isn't an option. And when I blow the horn, I'm going to need help. I'm going to need your tribe to stand alongside me, to fight with me when the time comes. Flint winced. Esker had gone straight in, and now there was no turning back. The battle at Winterfang was lost because our parents didn't really know what they were up against, Flint said quietly. They tried to fight an Ice Queen with spears and bows, but that's not enough. We need to call upon, he lowered his voice, magic this time, upon the frost horn, the Sky Song, your dreams, and Flint's inventions, Esker said firmly. Flint cringed into his furs. They hadn't even reached the main course, and he and Esker were already talking about magic and inventions. But before Jay could reply to any of this, another voice answered from the end of the table. Rook. She flung her bowl aside and stood up, her eyes scanning the rest of her tribe. That wanderer there wants us to stand alongside her and fight. With magic? The very thing that tore this kingdom apart? She thinks that with her help of our songs, she'll find the forgotten Frosthorn and use it to defeat the Ice Queen. Rook gestured around the cabin. She wants us to risk all of this for the sake of a magic that no one believes in anymore. There were mumblings from the feather tribe as Rook's poison worked deeper. So, what do you say, Jay? You've always told us to lay low, out of sight, out of danger. Jay said nothing for a while, then he cleared his throat. I wonder, Rook, whether Esker and Flint are right. Hiding away until the midnight sun passes isn't the answer anymore. Not when it means risking the lives of all of our families trapped in Winterfang. Maybe we do in fact have a fight after all. And if so, we might need to start trusting in Erkenwall's magic again once more. The candlelight glimmered over Rook's feathers. We were managing fine before your guests showed up. What if they were tailed by the Tusk Guards? What if the Ice Queen finds us? The feather tribe exchanged anxious glances. Or, Rook spat, what if fighting means the end for us, like it did for so many of our parents? The boys and girls huddled around the table nodded. We might be eaten by wolverines, cried one. Or cursed by the Ice Queen the shaman, cried another. And before long the tribe had erupted again, shouts, threats, fists banging. Rook sat down and smirked at Jay. And that is what happens when you let outsiders in. Jay tried to bring everyone back to order, to make them understand that their tribe wasn't something fixed and closed, that it was open to strange dreams, fair people, and even a girl with a golden eagle by her side. But Rook's words had stirred the feather tribe's fears, and it brought the worst of their hearts out into the open. Blue, meanwhile, raised her hands to cover her ears, and Esker turned frightened eyes to Flint. What do we do now? She said, her voice cracking. Flint thought back to Whitefur's words. Tell them about your voice. Esker reached a hand up to her throat. My voice is nothing compared to all their shouting. Nothing. Flint shook his head. Then tell them about the Sky Song's power. Tell them about the things that Whitefur said your voice can do when you find the Frosthorn. Silence the tribes, command animals, and shake the skies, Esker whispered. Good, Flint replied. Now louder. Much louder. Beside her, Jay leant forward. Tell them, Esker. They might be my tribe, but they're not listening to me. Perhaps they need to hear it from somewhere else. Esker looked at the raging crowd. I don't think it'll work. There's too many of them, and my voice isn't big enough. Flint shook his head. You just need one person to listen, then others will follow. Esker stood up, her knees shaking, and cleared her throat. Flint thought of the Ice Queen winding away Esker's voice, and he knew that when the anthem came again they'd hear it, even though they were in the middle of a mountain, and that afterwards Esker's voice would be still weaker. But for now she had words, and she needed them to speak with all the force left inside. Tell them, he said. The Sky Song isn't something that belongs to worn-out legends, Esker cried. A few children looked up at her, but most continued to cheer and shout. Keep going, Flint urged. It's the tune the North Star played on the Frosthorn to breathe life into Erkenwald all those years ago, she shouted. And it's the only thing that can defeat the Ice Queen now. I may not remember anything from my past, but I know this. We only have 3 days to stop the Ice Queen cursing Erkenwald and wiping out the fur and feather tribes forever. But together with my friends and the help of Erkenwald's magic, I will find the Frosthorn and claim the Sky Song. And when I do, I will use my voice to stop the Ice Queen and put an end to the divide between tribes. Some of the Feather Tribe heckled, and for a second Flint wondered how on earth Esker was going to break through their distrust and hatred. But then he noticed that others were listening, and Esker was forging on. I will silence the tribes, command animals, and shake the skies. More heads turned to listen, and Balapan leapt from her perch and circled in the air above them all. I may not have a whole tribe behind me, Esker cried. I may not have words that you think amount to much now, but I won't give in. I won't back down. I have a voice, and I'm going to make it count. She had their tribe's attention now. The chamber was absolutely silent, because we have a kingdom to protect and families to bring home, and even in the face of an Ice Queen, whose anthem reaches every corner of Erkenwald, our voices matter more. I will find the Frosthorn, and I will blow it from the stars, and as one tribe we will beat the Ice Queen. Balapan's call rang out then, like a shuddering battle cry, and suddenly the Feather Tribe were on their feet, whooping and cheering. And Flint smiled at Esker. Some people collected shields of bark, others collected eggshells and feathers, but Esker, she collected people. Blue ran around the table and hugged Esker tight, and at their feet Pebble began chasing his tail and yapping excitedly. Jay raised an eyebrow at Rook, and that is what happens when you let outsiders in. Then, to Flint, Esker, and Blue's surprise, the tribe began to sing a song, slow, lilting tune that reminded Flint of the way the wind soughed through the trees in deep roots. And with every word that sounded, Flint realized that this was a tribe who, contrary to Rook's words, did still believe in magic. Up north, before the groaning splinters, the grey man stands up tall. He's been there now for many winters, though snow and hail does fall. The cliffs are steep, we can but warn, gravestones are often laid, so those who search for the Frosthorn must seek the grey man's aid. And though the Ice Queen's anthem began as soon as the Feather Tribe finished singing, weaseling its way into the depths of the lost chambers, it was a soulless drone compared to what Flint, Esker, and Blue had just heard. Flint reached down and ruffled Pebble's head. We have a lead now. We need to find the grey man before the groaning splinters, the icebergs way up north. Esker rubbed her throat as the Ice Queen's anthem wound its way round her windpipe, leaving her voice almost threadbare. We'll leave as soon as it's light. Jay nodded. We're behind you, Esker. When you find the Frosthorn and blow it from the stars, we'll know to come out of hiding to help you. I don't suppose either of you has a plan for how to reach the stars? Esker hung her head and blew through her lips, but Flint looked at Jay with glittering eyes. I have an idea, he said. Esker stepped forward. An invention? Flint avoided her eyes. Possibly, he fiddled with his cuff. I don't like talking about my ideas until I've properly thought them through, just in case they don't work. Jay nodded. what do you need? Is there anything we can help with? As a matter of fact, excuse me. Yes, there is. Flint picked up a snow goose feather from the ground. It was white and large, and he ran a finger up and down its length. How many of these do you have? Jay grinned. Thousands. Could I take some, please? Jay picked up another and pressed it into Flint's hand. You can take them all. And it was then that Flint recalled where he'd seen Jay before. Years and years ago, when he was little more than a scrap, his pa had taken him hunting, and out on the foothills before the Nevercliffs, they had shared food with the Feather Chief and his son. Flint tilted his head towards Jay. I remember you. Jay was thoughtful for a moment, and then he smiled. Round the campfire, when we were very small, he said slowly. We ate snow hare and caribou before everything, he paused, changed, and you had lost your quiver of arrows in the river that day, and I lent you mine? Flint nodded, and Jay reached out and put his hand on Flint's shoulder. From this day on, you and your tribe will always be welcome here, and if we cross paths hunting, we will stop and eat and share stories. Flint felt a heaviness inside him lift at the warmth of Jay's words. Erkenwald was that little bit closer to the kingdom he remembered before the Ice Queen arrived and turned it upside down. But while Flint, Esker, Blue, and the Feather Tribe busied themselves collecting snow goose feathers and clearing away dinner, Rook brushed past the Moonflit in the entrance tunnel. She clutched the wolverine fang in a hot, angry fist, and with the sound of the Ice Queen's anthem ringing in her ears, she stalked out into the starless night. And that's where we're going to end it today. See you later. Bye.